Hello and welcome to your Urban Connection. Remember, this is the channel that is often imitated, but is never duplicated. Now, I want to get into an issue that I've wanted to talk about for a while, and I want to answer. Now, can't answer, but I want to ask the question that is being asked by many people in the Black community all over the country. And the question is, has the Black church abandoned the civil rights movement? Now, that is a question that I hear almost on a not daily, but a weekly basis. Almost hardly a week goes by that somebody doesn't ask me, well, where are the preachers? Where are the ministers? Where are the pastors? Where's the Black church at on this issue, on that issue? And I don't know what to tell them, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know if I should tell them that they think the fight is over. But if they ask me, I would tell them the fight has only just begun. You see, in the early civil rights movement, the pastors, the ministers, and the Black church was at the forefront of the fight for equal justice in our country. But it appears that now, even though many of the issues that we were dealing with in the 60s are still with us today, the only thing missing is the Black church. You see, the issue of voting rights, the issue of housing discrimination, the issue of bank redlining, the issue of discrimination in education, the issue of discrimination in hiring, the issue dealing with juvenile justice, the issue dealing with police injustice, okay, and legal injustice are still with us. Those were the same issues that the church was fighting for and about in the 60s, okay, in the 50s. But at that time, we had something that is missing today, and that is strong, Black, organized churches and church leaders. And let me give an example. You know, who can forget that some of the names I'm going to give you here, I'm just going to talk to you about. Let's talk about, say, Reverend Lowry, who was the head of the SCLC, okay, who was a leading pastor in the 50s and 60s. And yet, he's deceased now. He's gone. And his voice is sorely missed. And he's not been replaced, you see? And so we don't understand where the preachers are today. And listen, there's still some what they would call themselves as good old country preachers who could do a heck of a job in the pulpit on Sundays, but they also could do a heck of a job out in the streets fighting for justice for the members of their community and their parishioners. And Mr. Lowry, many of you will remember him, is just one of the country preachers that I'm going to refer to who was out there and available and doing everything that he could do to see to it that equality came to members not only of his church, but of his community. Okay? Now, you know, there's a couple of things that bring me to this, and I just want to tell you all that, you know, in September the 2nd through September the 5th, I believe it was, the National Baptists of the USA, which had their convention in Baltimore, Maryland, and that is the largest Pentecostal congregation of African Americans in the country. They have a membership of over 5 million preachers. Okay? 5 million. Okay? Now, they have a legacy, or they will tell you that they have a legacy. And that legacy is not only preaching for souls and sinners and others, but also fighting for justice for members of their various communities. All right? But for some reason, we don't see that today. And I want to tell you, I'm not the only one that's saying that. You see, what I want to talk to you all about today, most people know about, but they don't want to talk about it. But I'm going to talk about it. And what I want you to do, whether you agree with me or you disagree with me, I would like to see your comments in the comments section. Let me know what you think. But I want to go further. I want to show you, just to let you know that it's not only me that feels the way that I feel. I'm going to read to you from an article in the Community Voice on April the 19th of this year. The newly elected president of the Ministerial League had this to say about the league in which he leads. He says that he remembers a time when ministers were the leaders of our community. At the forefront of that leadership, he recalls, was the Ministerial League. They led community marches, walked the streets, and calmed the protesters during the riots of the 60s, and went to City Hall to confront city officials about policies, policing, and laws that negatively affected and impacted the African American community. Now, they were a voice for the voiceless, said this president of the Ministerial League, who just took over as president of the Wichita Ministerial League at the beginning of this year. They were a strong organization led by strong leaders. The question is, where are they now? Some members of the Black community are banking on this bishop to be a strong leader who will bring the league back to its glory days. Ladies and gentlemen, all I want to say is this. The community is waiting. And I want to say to all the other Black communities and African American communities across the country, and the leaders are ministerial leagues, pastors, or ministers, or preachers. The communities in which you save souls and try to get sinners to change their ways, they're waiting for you to return to those same streets that those that came before you walked and talked. They wanted to see you go to City Hall and deal with issues that negatively impact the communities in which you preach and pastor in. They want to see you addressing the same issues that they were dealing with in the 60s, because they're all still here. And in addition to those that I just mentioned, today we're dealing with voting rights again. We're dealing with police reform again. We're dealing with discrimination in the schools again. We're dealing with discrimination in hiring again. We're dealing with discrimination in the job market, discrimination everywhere. Okay? And you know what? There are those that will say, we've made a lot of progress. And I'm willing to tell you, not nearly as much progress as we should have made. And we should still be making progress. But it appears to me that over the last 10 to 20 years, we're going backwards. Things are getting worse. And over the last 10 years, since Donald Trump has entered the political arena, they've gotten bolder, and they've been emboldened to show their races and racism outwardly. There was a time it was inward, but now it's outwardly. Some don't hesitate. And the fact of the matter is that we have a void in that strong leadership position with the absence of the Black church. Now, let me go back and I'll show you another one. Another good old country preacher. You know, you heard the name, I'm sure many of you have been around long enough. You've heard the name of Ralph Abernathy. Here he is right here. Mr. Abernathy was a good old country preacher who could save a soul on Sunday. But he was also not afraid to go out into the community and walk the streets of his community to save the lives and fight for justice. And should we get this up here? Hold on just a minute. And fight for justice in his community. Still already. It's not what I want. Give me just a minute here to get this straightened out. There he is, Reverend Lowry. Okay, so here's another one that basically saw as his duty to the community that he pastored in to also get involved in the inequality, the racism, the injustices that members of his community and parishioners of his church were dealing with. And he didn't hesitate. You know, we had many of those, ladies and gentlemen. And some of you youngsters might not be aware of who this is, Reverend Ralph Abernathy. You might not be familiar with Joseph Lowry, but those people that are 40 and over, surely you know who Reverend Lowry and who Reverend Ralph Abernathy were. And these are just a couple. There are many more. Let me give you one more. I want you to understand that Jesse Jackson was another one. But there was a lot of these guys out there, and they were all over our country. We had these strong Black church leaders. And there's one that all of you will know and remember, regardless as to your age. None other than the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. Okay? Here's a guy that not only preached to save souls on Sunday, but he also spent the rest of the week in the streets of various communities throughout this country. Spent days in city halls, in county community meetings, in statewide legislative meetings, even in Washington, D.C. You see, he took it all the way to the top. He dealt with presidents. And it's all about dealing with the inequalities and the racism and the discrimination that his members of the African American citizens of this country were facing and dealing with. Okay? Matter of fact, this man gave his life. He gave his life in Memphis, Tennessee, fighting for trash haulers. Okay? He was assassinated in Memphis, Tennessee. He was there fighting for equal rights and equalities and racial justice for trash haulers. Ladies and gentlemen, we don't see that kind of dedication today from the Black church. We don't see the commitment today to come to the streets to talk about and work with the local city councils, county commissioners, state legislators, not even to mention politicians in Washington, D.C. We don't see it. And as a result, nothing happens because of the lack of strong, organized voices. You see, most of the work that is done today to fight these injustices and the discrimination that we feel, and let me just tell you, in addition to those that I've mentioned, we now are fighting with DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, which was not around during the days of Reverend Martin Luther King. It was not around during the days of Reverend Joseph Lowery. Not around during the days of Ralph Abernathy. But you can bet your bottom dollar. Had this issue of DEI been around and being relegated to the back row, you can bet your bottom dollar that these three would have been heavily and deeply involved to making sure that this issue stayed on the front burner and not on the back burner. See, what we see today in our communities, most of them, all of these issues, affirmative action, DEI, discrimination, redlining, discrimination in our schools, the juvenile justice discrimination, police killings, and a high number, the disparities in the workforce, the disparities in health, the disparities in education, those are all dealt with today by activists, local activists, and advocates. And those people are attempting to fill the bigger shoes that are sitting by idly that pastors, ministers, and preachers are vacating. And so then, you see, nobody should question what has happened to the church, the Black church, in the civil rights movement. So the question is valid. Has the Black church abandoned the civil rights movement? And if not, then somebody, please, I beg you, please tell me why we should not feel that way. Why members of these various communities across the country are all asking that question. Now, I understand that many people will talk among themselves because they don't want to talk about this issue in public. They're afraid of being ostracized. But we have to deal with it. We can't sit back and pretend that this is not an issue in our community. And I'm not talking about here locally, I'm talking about nationwide. This is a problem. It's a problem all over. Every night, almost every day, you can turn on television and see in some area of the country another case of discrimination in one form or another has been affected on some member of the African American community. And rightly so, it happens to other members also, other people of color. But I want to talk about the Black church and the Black community. That's what I want to talk about today. Because to me, that is where the civil rights movement got his start, okay, was in the black church with black men. And it goes back as far as, and some of you is not as old as I am, won't remember this name, Reverend Adam Clayton Powell, okay, who was a minister, who was also a member of the New York State Legislature, okay? And he was a member of Congress. So see, ladies and gentlemen, this was the focus. And this was where the action was when it came to dealing with civil rights. It basically was in the church. So what happened? What changed? But I can tell you this, if we don't talk about it, and we don't address it, and we want to push it aside, push this issue under the rug, we're doing a total disservice to African American communities all across this country. So, to be sure, I just want to tell you that knowing that I was going to do this program, I've reached out to several ministers locally and attempt to get someone to come onto this program and discuss this issue with me. I got no takers. I've reached out to the new president of the National Baptist USA, who's in the state of Connecticut. That's where he resides. I've not heard back from him. And it's been over 3 weeks. But nothing's going to stop me from doing this program. Nothing is going to stop me from calling attention to this issue and this problem that we have. And those of you that want to sit back and pretend that you didn't see this void and you don't feel this void and you didn't notice the absence of the Black church in this community, and no matter what community you're in America, you're experiencing the same problem, then you are blindfolded or you don't want to see it. And you are a part of the problem if you're not a part of the solution. And we have to have solutions to these problems. Like I said, these problems are growing worse. We're being treated worse than second-class citizens today in America. And we're sitting back acting like everything is okay. And we don't even understand what is coming to us if we don't make some changes and soon. We don't even understand what Donald Trump could do to us if he gets elected on November the 5th. We don't know what he has in store because we've not looked, we've not researched it, and we've not believed when he tells you what he's going to do. When he tells you in Project 2025 what he's going to do to you from a standpoint of education, jobs such as replacing all the civil servants, okay, and replacing them with people that are loyal to him, getting rid of public education. He's already told you what he's going to do to women's reproductive rights. He's also told you that what he's going to do if he's elected, he will have the National Guard or the military officials do away with you, American citizens. And yet you got dummy after dummy after dummy out there, mostly Black males, fighting for the right to vote and cast a ballot for Donald J. Trump. And the man is clearly telling you that if he's elected, he doesn't have one single thing to offer you. Not one thing. He doesn't have one policy. And I dare any of you to tell me about a policy that he has with you in mind. I dare you. Yet, you will turn your back on a Black woman who wants to break the ceiling and not only become the first Black woman, but the first woman president of the United States. I heard a woman last week. Matter of fact, maybe it was earlier this week. A woman in Pennsylvania, Philadelphia to be exact, show her ignorance because she said she couldn't vote for Kamala Harris because Kamala was not educated enough, was not intelligent enough, didn't have the experience to be president. So she was voting for Donald Trump. Well, let me just explain something to you, ma'am. Kamala Harris has more experience than almost any person, any candidate ever to run for president of the United States. Donald Trump had absolutely zero political experience when he ran for president in 2015. I didn't hear you say anything about him not having the intelligence, the education, the experience, the qualifications to run. You didn't say that. And yet today, Donald Trump stands before you as a candidate with a criminal record, which consists of 34 felonies for business fraud, 2 convictions for defamation, stands trial, convicted in New York for holding on to classified documents that did not belong to him. And yet, he's more qualified than Kamala Harris. You know, it's a shame that you would go on national television and allow the entire world to see your ignorance that was driven by your dedication to a man who is totally unfit, unqualified, and even called by members of his own party and former members of his cabinet a racist, a demagogue, a danger to the American, and a fascist. But yet you want to vote for that man because you can't bring yourself to vote for a Black woman. Shame on you, honey. Shame on you. And there are others just like her. It's unfortunate. And it hurts me to say that. It's painful for me to believe that there are people out there that have this mentality because it says something about you. You see, it's people like this that fit the profile of a Trump voter. And the profile is uneducated, ignorant people. That's who votes and supports MAGA. Okay, that's the profile. And people like this woman, she certainly fits the profile, as did several others at this same interview that was done by Alex Wagner of MSNBC in Philadelphia just 3 or 4 days ago. You see, and it's people like this that they're ignorant and they won't take advantage of what's available to them. Because if you have a computer, and if you don't have a computer, I'm sure Philadelphia has libraries that you could go to and use a computer to do a little bit of research on Donald Trump and do some research on Kamala Harris. Okay? Find out what you don't know about her, because there's a lot that you don't know. And it might make a difference to you, and it might not. Maybe your allegiance is to Donald J. Trump, because there were others in your meeting that were making statements such as Donald Trump is a businessman. Yeah, he's a businessman. And I'm going to tell you what kind of businessman he is. He's the kind of businessman that goes bankrupt running casinos. Now, what the heck does that tell you about it? A businessman that cannot make money running casinos. He went bankrupt running some of the biggest casinos ever seen in the state of New Jersey. Now, yet you will talk about he's a businessman. Well, let me tell you, he has no business for you, good, bad, or otherwise. But you keep on following him and keep on supporting him. And I think you will be right where he is going to be after this election. Okay? Anyhow, folks, I want you all, like I said, I want to hear your comments, how you feel about this program, and what answer can you give, if you can give one, to my question: has the Black church abandoned the civil rights movement? That's a question that deserves an answer. And by the way, if any of you ministers, preachers, pastors, or what have you feel offended, I offer no apologies. I stand by what I've stated here. And if I'm wrong, prove me wrong. In other communities all across this country, if you feel the way that I do, I don't care what state you're in, I don't care what city you're in, leave me a note in the comments section, letting me know you agree with me, and if you don't agree with me. And if you don't, tell me why. Because from what I'm seeing, this is not a local problem and a local issue. This is countrywide. But I don't live in every city in every state. So maybe I'm missing something. And if so, let me know. That's my show. Thanks for watching.